Welcome back. Let's put this in the ether. You know, when it comes to marriage, right? I think marriage is basically a rich man's game, right? What do I mean? What do I mean by that? A rich man game. Look, when you look at marriage, marriage is just a business, right? It's a business. It's a business of exchanging assets and passing down legacies, right? What does that mean? In order to have assets, you have to have money, right? You have to have money in order to do that. And in order to pass down legacy, that's why you have to have marriage come in to pass down your legacy and assets to a extension of your genetics, right? That's what it is. So what I mean by marriage is a rich man game, that it is a rich man. You have to have a lot of money to be involved in this contract, right? And if you're poor, you have no place in getting married, right? When you're poor, there's no benefit in getting married. It's only disadvantages. When you're poor, right? When you're poor, what do you have? This is why I don't suggest if you're poor people, if your people are poor and you don't have any asset to your name, why are you getting married, right? Especially young men when you don't have nothing, right? I want to tell young men that if you want to get married, right, make sure you have a house to your name first. Right, make sure you have some kind of assets, collateral to your name before you ever think about marrying somebody. Because marriage is a contract, it's a business contract. When you look at it, right? Marriage is just basically a way of distributing your wealth or pass down your lineage to somebody, or find a company that's willing to pass down your genetics. Right? Poor people should not get married. In my book, if you don't have anything to gain, why are you even getting married? If you are still renting an apartment, you have a kid, right? If you have a kid, having a kid doesn't mean you have to get married, right? Having a kid does not mean you have to get married. When you have a kid, right? When you have a kid, that means that you're just irresponsible before marriage, right? You want to have kids before you get married, right? If you have a kid before you get married, you're just basically irresponsible, and you shouldn't be marrying each other. They have no excuse to get married. Now you involve a contract in your relationship as well, right? It's bad enough you have a kid out of wedlock. Now you're just inviting more headache into your lifestyle, right? Rich people don't have any asset. Rich people don't have any collaterals. They don't have any land, right? So there's no point of getting married at all, right? Not only that, you as a man that's still trying to make it in life, and you haven't got nothing yet, why are you getting married for? That's the last option in your mind. You can still start a family, right? You can still start a family, but you do not need to involve this kind of marriages. Because in order to get married, you have to be wealthy. Because when you look at marriages, it's very expensive, right? You have to worry about all these elements you got to factor in, right? Taking your family, your estate, right? Your estate, your collateral, all these stuff, right? But when you're poor, you don't have none of that stuff. What's there to distribute? What's there to pass off? Nothing, right? Nothing at all. That's why That's why a lot of these people that's divorcing right now, these Jeff Bezos, these multi-billionaires, they could afford it. That's why they're willing to divorce. They could afford all this stuff because they're rich. It doesn't affect them that much, right? Because it's all a business. So if you're poor, you have no business getting married at all. That's my opinion. And if you want to get married, make sure you get your situation straight first. Make sure you're wealthy, right? Make sure you got your money straight. Make sure you understand marriage is not about love, right? Marriage, especially marriage today, modern marriage is not about love, right? Back in the day it was, or not about love. Back in the day, marriage is not about love, period. Marriage is about starting a family, starting a relationship, basically, and having a long-term relationship, right? But no, we misconstrued about marriage these days, that marriage is only about love, right? Which is totally not about love at all, right? Marriage today is mainly about business. It's about business. Is to think a long-term effect of what you can pass on your lineage too, right? It's all in all, it's just a business propositions. Right, knowing where your money gonna go to after your death, knowing who's gonna access your money, know who you're gonna distribute your wealth to, right? You're married to have a family, to have a legacies, right? And that's why married people get married and wealthy people get married. When you look at it, the only people back in history, only people that get married, that have this contract are rich people, right? These J.P. Morgans, these Rockefellers, these Henry Ford, right? Because they have money, right? So is this a contract to pass out their lineage to the offspring, who get their possession, who get their estate after that? When you're poor, what do you have? You don't have none of that when you're poor, right? Especially regular people. Regular people don't have that kind of stuff, right? Regular people, especially there's a lot of married people in the hood that's married, but then again they're still renting over and over, right? And then they think about, all right, we'll get married first, then we'll buy a house, not realizing it's a totally disadvantage for the men. The men should always have the house before the women. In my book, men, if you ever think about marriage, make sure you have a house first. Which I don't condone getting married, but make sure you have a house first into your name. Don't put her name into your house because it's yours. Because you want to make sure you have the house before you were in a relationship with her, or else she'll get the whole thing. Or else she'll get 50-50, she get your house. Right? So my best advice for young kids is that do not buy a house buy a house before you get married. And then if you can't afford a house, don't even dare to get married. If you can't afford a house, you can't afford marriage. Right? If you can't afford land, you can't afford marriage. You can't afford an estate, you can't afford marriage. Right? If you can't afford marriage, why you want to marry anyway? It takes a lot of money. Right? It's a rich man game. Right? You have to be a rich man, a wealthy man. That's why you see all these rich men have multiple wives, because they can afford it. They have all these movie star Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, right? They have all these wives, all these kids because they have money. They have money in the bank. I mean, sure, the divorce law might be against them as well, but they're financially set in life, right? They have multiple estate. They have lawyers that can write out contracts for them. But if you don't have that, right, you shouldn't get married at all, right? If you have a lawyer to write all these contracts, you don't understand businesses, because marriage is a business, right? Then you shouldn't get married at all. But no, I keep seeing people making that mistake. Getting married, get a contract, next thing you know, that's setting themselves up for failure. Next thing you know, right? They got married before they bought a house together. Now their marriage goes south. Now the woman has possession of the house. She get 50-50. Now he's got to pay child support, and now it leads to him being broke, right? So think before you get married, right? So if you want everyone to get married, make sure you're wealthy. If you're poor and broke, you should not think about getting married, right? And if you're poor and broke and you have a kid, leave it like that. Don't get married until you... just don't get married, basically, if you have a kid already. But my point is, if you're broke and struggling, the last thing in your mind is getting married, right? If you're broke and struggling, now, and when you get married, you're going to be a married, broke, and struggling couple. That's what it is. Right? It's going to be harder in life for you. But people don't understand the reason why we have marriage laws, why people get married, especially these days. It's basically business, right? It's basically business, and especially during biblical time. It's just a business. When you look at biblical time, when you look at marriage, it's also strictly towards business. There's no love have to do with it. Love does not have to do with marriages, right? Marriage and love is totally different things. All right? Don't conflate those two together. People tend to get married, because I love them. No. The reason why people get married is because of business. That's it. Pure love that have nothing to do with marriage at all. And that's what people are conflating. They think they're in love with each other. They think the next step to take their relationship is to get married. No, you should never think of that. That's when you're bringing money into it, right? Being married is when you bring money into your relationship. That's what it is. Now you're inviting all these contracts. That's why you think marriage, you have to have a contract. Because it's all business. When you look at business, what is it all about? When you look at business, it's all about contract. Remember, the United States is corporations, right? What do corporations have in common? Corporations involve a lot of contract, right? You're incorporating yourself in a bond between two people. So you need to have a contract. And what do contract associate with? A contract associate with a business. Right? There's no love when it comes to marriage. It's all about business. Why do you think you have to go to divorce court and split everything 50-50? For some reason, women understand this. Women understand. I hate to say it, but women understand the concept of marriage. Women understand the concept of marriage is only businesses, right? But most guys out there don't understand the concept of marriage. They think they have to propose to them when they're in love. No, just because you're in love, you're just in love. That's it. Love, when you're in love, it doesn't mean you have to get married to each other, right? If she forced you, if she asks you a question like, so what are we, or Where can we? What are we in a relationship? That's a red flag, man. She's pushing you. She's trying to get you to propose to her for marriage, right? If she ever questions you, what are the state of your relationship? That means she's rushing your relationship. Guys should take your time when it comes to relationship as much as possible. But when you look at it, marriage is just basically a contract. It's not no love have to do with it at all, right? So if you ever decide to get married, right, make sure that you're rich. Make sure you're wealthy, because marriage is a rich man game. If you're poor, you have no business in getting married at all, right? If you're still struggling, try and make ends meet. Business marriage is the last thing on your mind, right? Make sure you get your priorities straight before you even get married. Make sure you have your estate right? Make sure you have your property in check, your asset in check before you ever get married. Because once you're married, man, it's a distribution of your wealth, basically. But I digress. People need to understand that marriage is not about love. Marriage is a rich man game, and if you're poor, you should not be involved in that. But on that note, guys, I digress. But if you agree with me, let me know if you agree with me. Like, share, subscribe. On that note, guys, peace and blessings.